Hey pilots, this is lesson 10. It's our last lesson together. This week we will talk about the enhance process, and then I'll explain what the final assignments look like. So in the enhance stage, we are looking at how the mission happened, okay? So there are two parts to it. We want to look at risk management, and I'll explain what that means, and that should be done just before the mission. Then we are looking at quality assurance, and what that means is we want to make sure that everything that took place in our mission was of the best quality, and I will explain a little more of what that means too. So if we go to the dictionary for risk management, it gives you a long explanation about where you want to identify what the risks are, right? You want to, and every company does this, by the way, just so you know. It's like, okay, where are the risks? What, that affects the quality of our product or our services or the outcome. And then once you do that, okay, the areas that are risky, how do we minimize the risk, right? What changes can we make so that things turn out better? So I found this cool image of the International Space Station, and what they did was a risk assessment of probability of impacts from debris out in space. And when you look at the picture, it's like, okay, it's obvious. Okay, here's the front, and those spaces in red is what's going to be impacted. It's kind of like duh. However, what is really important about going through the steps of this process is that it tells everyone on the team, like, okay, here are the problem areas, right? So the areas in red, we want to make sure those structures can endure these hits of debris, right? The space trash and the rocks and whatever. Also, you don't want to put your really important equipment in those spaces, right? You want to store them where it's blue. The blue spaces is where the low risk is. Red is the high risk, all right? So you're going to store like the CPUs and those kind of things, in those areas, right? So it's important to take the time to do the risk assessment, because now everyone's on the same page in understanding, okay, we need to focus on these pieces here if we want this project to work out. So risks in aviation clearly are important to look at because, as you can see here, it could lead to tragedy. And so the FAA has really put a lot of emphasis on assessing what risks are and risk management. And they've come up with 4 specific areas that are the big focus, and it's basically how they've grouped how to manage the risk. So the first area of risk is the pilot, and that seems kind of obvious, right? Is the pilot in good health? Does the pilot understand the laws? Something tells me this pilot here probably should not be flying, and so we have to look at the condition of our pilot and training and experience and mental health, physical health, right? So this is a very important category. So the next area or category of risk is the aircraft itself. Here, this picture is an illustration of the what's called stress corrosion, and this was about an airplane that basically did some island hopping. It was sort of like a shuttle flight from one island to another, and had done 88,000 flights over many years. And where you see the circle, here's the close-up on the right corner. this piece was eroding and wearing away, and in the middle of a flight, the wind got caught up under there and pulled the entire top of the fuselage off. Okay, and many of the passengers were sucked out of the plane. The only ones who survived were the ones that were actually strapped into their seatbelt. And this accident, which happened, I think in the 80s, really had the FAA put some new laws in place to make sure that all the airlines are doing checks to make sure that these areas that might be susceptible to corrosion are really looked at carefully. So like the wings, the landing gear, the engine, these parts, and here, look, the side of the plane. So the third category of risk is the environment in which you are flying your aircraft. The first picture here is a flock of birds, and the engines can actually withstand birds flying into the engine, so don't panic if you're getting ready to fly and you see a bird. It's more about large birds and large flocks, okay, all at once, and that is debilitating to the engine. And that is something that airports will actually stop takeoffs if they see a large flock of birds near the runways. And obviously on the right, being struck by lightning is not cool. And so when there's a thunderstorm, you have to wait it out. No one's taking off. And you know what? That's fine by me. So the last category of risk in aviation is, what is the purpose of flight? And often when there is urgency or there's an emergency, we tend to rush, we tend to skip steps, and that's why certain protocols with the pre-flight checklist is critical. You have to do it. You will lose your job if you don't as a pilot. Because certain things can happen when it could have been easily avoided. You know, so here we have a medical helicopter. And of course, you can imagine the urgency in this flight. Other flights where there's a lot of urgency, trying to get the overnight mail. You know, Amazon sends it to you the next day. So does Zappos shoes, you know. So there is this urgency of getting these flights, getting somewhere on time. And it's very important in terms of looking at risk management to have protocols in place to make sure these really important steps are not skipped and we are not taking extra risks because of the purpose of the flight. So the risk management system that's used by pilots in aviation and also for drones is called the PAVE checklist. And PAVE is an acronym. P stands for pilot, so you want to make sure your pilot is healthy, has had enough sleep, is not under the influence of any kind of drugs or alcohol. A stands for aircraft. You want to make sure that your aircraft is in good condition, that the batteries haven't been dropped, for example. You know, the propellers are in good condition. There are no nicks. V, they use the V out of environment, and you want to make sure the weather is appropriate for flying. And finally, E has to do with external pressure. What is the purpose of the flight? You want to make sure that you're taking into consideration whatever external pressures there are, weighing against the risk in making that flight and making the best decisions so that your flight will be successful. So the second part of our enhance stage is we look at quality. Okay, how did this mission go? And quality assurance is really what this is called. And you may have heard when you're put on hold and the recording will say, this conversation may be recorded for quality assurance. And basically every company has some method for monitoring the quality of if it's the product or the service. because you want to make sure that you have the best quality, because if you don't, you're going to be out of business. Okay, so chain restaurants, they all have to check the quality from one restaurant to another. And with quality assurance, there is a process, all right? So you're looking at every stage of your process, paying attention to make sure the quality is the same throughout, okay? So this Dilbert cartoon, the boss says, I'm going to cut the quality control budget so that we have more money for our sales force. And when you think about it, that's probably not a good idea. And of course, Dilbert says, so your strategy is to sell a larger volume of defective products? Because potentially that is what can happen. If you stop watching the quality, things can go downhill. There's a saying, do not buy a car on a Friday that was made on a Friday or a Monday. Friday, people are tired, they're ready for the weekend. And on Monday, people are tired, don't want to be at work, all right? And so there's more likelihood of making mistakes. Now, I don't know how true that is, but that's what people say. And I don't even know how we would find out when a car was made, but it's just a saying. So as a drone team, when we think about quality assurance, we think about, we get together and we review how the mission went. And these are the 4 categories that we look at: safety, law-abiding, mission accomplished, professional. So these 4 categories are pretty obvious, right? So safety, did we complete the mission safely? Was anyone hurt? Did anyone almost get hurt? Law-abiding, did we obey all flight laws for drone operations? Mission accomplished, were we able to complete the rescue mission as expected? And professional, were we professional at all times? And in the enhance phase, we go through and take a look at each and every one of these questions to help us prepare to be better the next time around. Okay, so that we're not making the same mistakes, and maybe we have to change a process. Maybe we have to put some new checklists in place. Okay, so this step of the enhance phase is really important to us as a drone team. So this week you will have 2 assignments about the enhance stage, and what I did was I gave you some scenarios. For one of the assignments, I can't remember if it was 10 or 10.1, but either you're going to fill in the blanks, or you're going to answer true or false, or take a look at what stage. But many of these questions were taken directly from the Part 107 remote license, and this is the exam that you take to get your drone license. So because it is a very important part of the exam, and I wanted you to just take a look to see what some of those questions look like. And that's it for this week's lesson, and I look forward to seeing you on Friday, to seeing your responses, and have a great week. And just remember, message me anytime. I'm here for you. Bye.